It is indeed a great privilege and a pleasure to be here this morning at the TIS AESDII Northern Conclave for building CSR partnerships. This, in my opinion, is a very fine initiative taken by Rohan Sharma and his team, bringing in many of the stakeholders who are not only keen on participating in the national mainstream of CSR implementation, but who are seeking partnerships with corporates and with other NGOs to take the development agenda of the country forward. We have with us an array of extremely eminent speakers, and we hope that this 3-day conclave will provide not only a benchmark but a takeoff for these partnerships to develop. I understand that this is the third of a series and the fourth one will be in Guwahati shortly, but I would say that an initiative such as this, coming at a time when the high-level committee in the Government of India is looking at inputs for the next stage of CSR implementation in this country, to be very, very topical. This is contemporary, and I'm sure that the inputs from this conference will be taken across not only to all CSR practitioners, but to policymakers and also to the government. It was particularly a pleasure to share time and space with Dr. David Bilshitz and of course with Dr. Lahiri and Joint Secretary Gyanendra Singh. I wish this conclave all the very best. Thank you.
So welcome back after the tea break. Like I said, at least I haven't attended any conference or conclave where the keynote starts so late, and I think that itself is testimony to the fact that we've tried to get such distinguished speakers. Again, this has been an attempt. The impact assessment report will be given by each one of you at the end of each day and at the end of the third day. But truly, I remember when I had conceptualized this 2 years back, the first name that I put down, because Delhi was the first conclave, but because of logistical reasons, we had to make it the third. But the first name that I had put down on that schedule, and I said that if these CSR conclaves are to happen in India, I have to have this one person to be a part of it. And with that, Dr. Chatterjee, I think it is really an honor for me. It's also a very personal, it's a very emotional moment for me that, we started working many decades ago. Clearly, I regard him not only as a mentor to all of us, but also there is unquestionably, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee is the father and mother and everything of Indian CSR. Had he not been there, and I think truly he deserves a huge round of applause. And the best part about Dr. Chatterjee is that he has actually, while drafting the law, he took all sections and all stakeholders, like it's called today, into consideration. So be it the NGOs, be it the public sector companies, because he has such a wide experience as a seasoned bureaucrat. He's worked across departments, and I think that makes the India CSR law. And today we're talking about the CSR law, but I don't know how many of you know that Dr. Chatterjee actually was part of the guidelines, the first ever guidelines for corporate social responsibility for the central public sector enterprises, way back in 2010. So today everybody talks of CSR, thinking that with the 2013 Companies Act, everybody's today realized, but some of us have been engaging with this for eons, and Dr. Chatterjee, God knows for how long. And truly, sir, I'm very humbled, and it is truly an honor for me, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and the Jindal Global University to have got your time. Thank you very much, sir, for coming. And let me tell you that Dr. Chatterjee is an institution by himself. So please, if you have any questions, he is the person. He is the one who drafted it. He's the one who knows it all, an encyclopedia. So without further ado, Dr. Chatterjee, I want to give you a small token of our appreciation, like we do, but can I please have a bag for Dr. Chatterjee? Divya? And after that, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, over to you, please.
जब ये प्रोजेक्ट हम लोगों ने एडवर्टाइज किया, we came to know about this in 2000 from my NGO. उस टाइम he was the DG of that scheme in India, HRD में. और शायद केरल में सर वो मीटिंग हुई थी जिसके के लिए आप कई जो आपको डायरेक्टर्स याद करते हैं बहुत आपके शुक्रगुजार भी हैं कि आपने उसको जो है अर्लियर इट यूज्ड टू बी नोन एज श्रमिक विद्यापीठ एंड ही वाज द फादर फिगर who converted it to a Jan Shikshan Sansthan, which became an all-comprehensive body throughout the country and which did human service to the society. I'm really proud that I'm for the first time in encounter with you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm Amitabh Garg, Director. I'm Secretary of an organization, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Welfare Society from Allahabad. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan, for those very laudatory remarks about me. Rohan and I go back so long that it's very good to feel such a friendly and a very dear person to me. Actually, as he rightly said, that time was 2009, November, December, around about, when I got posted as secretary in the Department of Public Sector Enterprises. As you know, public sector enterprises constitute about 250 really big enterprises in this state. So we were trying to contemplate at the time, what should we do with public sector enterprises? And public sector enterprises, believe it or not, of course, were created for public good, but they were also doing a lot of CSR. And we then thought to ourselves, what is the entire public sector doing on CSR or about CSR? Or what can they do? So I started talking to many of the CMDs and I said, what kind of CSR are you doing? And the fact is that every one of them spoke in a different voice. One was doing this, one was doing that, one was doing another. And I said, would you know as CMD, how much are you spending on CSR? And he said, no. Would you know where you are spending this money? And he said, well, I can ask and find out. What have you done in the last 3 years? Well, I'll give you an answer in 3 years, and so on and so forth. And the fact then was that CSR for not only public sector companies, but for most people, was something that was also done. And it was done, today I'm feeling good, shall I do some CSR? Okay, let's do something. It was very ad hoc. It had absolutely no discipline, it had no direction, it had no particular focus on anything. And in the public sector, unfortunately, much of CSR was about obligation. How do you oblige an MP or an MLA or the minister or something or the other? And because they had some NGO to oblige, so pump money there and so on and so forth. It was both informal, it was non-productive, and it was often used or misused in many, many ways. So we said to ourselves, let's try and see what good we can do for society through CSR. What can we do for the marginalized, the deprived, the poorer sections, and how can we help them? And that's how the idea of the first ever guidelines in the world on CSR were actually issued. As Rohan rightly recalled, that date is the milestone of CSR for India. 1st April 2010. Please Google that and see those guidelines. They contain the genesis of the law that you now see. Those guidelines are about 22 pages long. Each page has about 400 words. I'm mentioning this to you because something very dramatic happens after this. We also said, public sector, let's work on CSR, because if you're going to say you must spend so much, then let charity begin at home. We can't ask the private sector to do CSR if public sector is not doing anything. Because the first question that private companies will ask is, what's the government doing? What are government companies doing? Why are you forcing us when government itself is doing nothing? And so we said, let's begin with public sector. if public sector comes on board, we can take a high position and say, look, the public sector is doing it, you too can, you too should. When we began in the public sector, we had about a year's time rolling it out. People began to understand it. They began to do CSR in a different way. And then sometime around May or June of 2011, a call comes from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And there's a secretary, Mr. Mittal, who's calling me. And he says to me, you know, you've done so much incredible CSR work in the public sector. Can we extend this to private sector? Now, in the public sector also, and I'll come back with my association with Rohan and Tis here, this talk he mentioned about sanitization of NGOs. So the public sector said, if we want to work with NGOs, and everyone has this weird notion about NGOs. NGOs तो ऐसे हैं कि बोर्ड आज यहाँ लगा दिया, फिर उठा के फिर वहाँ लगा दिया. NGOs are shifting targets, पता नहीं NGOs अच्छे हैं, बुरे हैं, क्या हैं, किसी को पता नहीं, और आप कह रहे हो उनके साथ काम करें. We are subject to audit, we are subject to CBI, we are subject to CBC. How do we just select NGOs at random? So we had started what is now known as a due diligence system. And we asked Tis. Now he heads up empanelment there because we wanted to have a system by which NGOs applied for empanelment. And once they were empaneled, then public sector could give money to them to execute projects. They had a beautiful system of empanelment. And once that started up, that's how our first association started with Rohan and with Tis, it became more or less symptomatic of the way that CSR was going to go ahead. So when this call comes from Mr. Mittal, he says to me that, look, the way we're going to go forward with this is we need a law. Now that law by itself will not happen. It can't be a CSR law which goes to Parliament and becomes a CSR bill, CSR act. That won't happen. But we are drafting the Companies Act. In that Companies Act, Bhaskar Saab, there are 470 sections, 470 section उसमें हैं. I will give you one section. मात्र एक ही सेक्शन में आपको दे सकता हूं. और आपके 22 पन्ने, जिस हर पन्ने में 400 शब्द हैं, उसको आप 120 शब्दों में विवरण करें. Give us one section in 120 words, condensing your entire 22-page guidelines into just one section. Now see the challenge. कैसे इंसान करे इसको? And we had some parameters which we will of course discuss, which needed to be in that section. Now, you are looking at it from the ground level because you are the people who implement it. Shift focus. अगर आप उस वक्त के सचिव होते, if you were the secretary of the department, तो आप क्या लिखते? Because you know that every word that you write will be analyzed, will be used, and will be implemented in the ground level by millions of people. And this will impact the lives of many, many millions of people. एक एक शब्द जो आप लिख रहे हो, इतने करोड़ों लोगों को impact करेगा. तो क्या लिखोगे? And that's how we began drafting section 135, and we began to see that every element of those guidelines and some additional elements also should come into it. Then once that draft was ready, it went to law department, and in Sarkar, you know what happens, it goes round and round and round and round. But luckily, it got made into section 135 in the company's bill at that time, which was being formulated in 2011-12. This is part one of the story. Second part. Who was the minister at that time? Mr. Moily. And Mr. Moily was a very highly intellectual person, very dedicated to CSR. He gave us a mandate that hold workshops across the country, take feedback, and whatever there is, incorporate it into that section. But he asked me that, Dr. Chatterjee, you've written all of this stuff. How do I sell it to my MPs? And informally, by that time, a huge groundswell of anti-opinion was generated. By whom? कौन इसके विरोध करने वाले? By? किसने बोला? जोर से बोलो. क्यों? Corporates actually started a vilification campaign कि जैसे तैसे भी इसको रोकना है. We will not allow this to pass. And again, informally, the influence of the corporate world in the parliament is how much? खुद ही सोच लो. Think. So he asked me, the Dr. Chatterjee, how do I sell this to my members of parliament? Because if we don't have their seal of approval, it will not pass. So we said, let us strategize. What are we doing with this law? What is the object? As Rohan asked us, why are we here? Why the law? There must be a rationale. अगर ना करते तो भी होता, but किया क्यों? Because the idea was, for the first time in human history, to allow the corporate world to participate directly in national development. That yes, government is already doing, but for development stops at government. क्योंकि उनका प्राइमरी कर्तव्य ये है कि गरीबों के लिए आप कुछ करें. But how to bring private sector in? How to give private sector a chance to be associated with development? That is the primary purpose. So he said, and we said, we will tell our MPs, this is a national development initiative. If you side with CSR, you are pro-development. If you don't side with CSR, you are anti-development. Now, which MP would say I am anti-development? So, political strategy भी बनाना पड़ता है. कोई भी चीज लॉ नहीं बनता. लॉ तभी बनता है जब लोग सोच समझ के देखते हैं कि भैया इसके अगेंस्ट विरोध हूं या इसके साथ में हूं. अगर साथ में हूं तो लोग क्या बोलेंगे, विरोधी हूं तो लोग क्या बोलेंगे. So we push them into a corner saying, you haven't a choice. It's either this or it's that. You tell us which. Moily Saab moved on. The bill went to Parliament, collapsed. Not because of CSR, because the government fell or was about to fall. So that finished up. नए मंत्री कौन आए? Fantastic, incredible, superhuman being, Sachin Pilot. Without any politics, whether he belongs here or not, I'm not interested. I'm just telling you that as far as I am concerned, the law is concerned, the corporate affairs is concerned, he was brilliant. And from day one he said, Dr. Chatterjee, this is something that I want to get done in my term, which may be 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 1 year, who knows? No politician knows how long he will stay. And so he went on the same path, the same strategy. And as luck would have it, it is he who piloted the bill. Sachin piloted that bill on that historic day of December 2013. There were 10 hours of debate on the company's bill at that time. 7 hours of those 10 hours were spent on section 135 only. 10 में से 7 घंटे मात्र धारा 135 पे बातें. लेकिन it was so electric that people opposed many other sections of the bill. But everyone said, इस बिल में एकमात्र सेक्शन दिखता है जो बहुत ही अच्छा है हमारे देशवासियों के लिए वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. You know how politicians can make speeches. But each one wanted to take the credit for section 135. And I was sitting in the officers' gallery and I was watching all this and I said, Zindabad, today is the day that we will actually make it. And that's how, friends, that particular law got passed. The 2013 bill became an act, the Companies Act of 2013. And section 135 started being implemented from 1st April 2014, as you all know it. Okay? You can divide the history of CSR in India into two pieces. The era of informal CSR, starting with Gandhiji's trusteeship and going back even more than that. And the era of formal CSR. Informal CSR ends with 1st April 2010. Formal CSR starts with 1st April 2010. Because now CSR had a format. It now had a focus. It now had a way of doing things. And we moved from this different concept of CSR, which was voluntary, it was ad hoc, it was, I'll do it when I feel like, no result orientation, obligational, vagara, vagara, into a situation where now you had a formal format to do it in. Very quickly, what is the CSR law, which all of you know? I'll just summarize it for our friends here. In one sentence, it is spending, important, not allocating. Spending 2% of your profits on CSR activities by companies above a certain threshold of profits. Which means if you earn 100 rupees of profit, you need not do CSR under the law. You may, but you don't have to. If you earn 5,000 rupees profits, you need not. If you earn 5 lakhs of profits, you need not. But if you go to 5 crores of profit, then and only then you fall under the ambit of the law. 5 करोड़ का मुनाफा कमाया भाई, तो करो समाज के लिए कुछ. अब भी नहीं करोगे, तो कब करोगे? So here was a model which said, मोटी कमाई अगर है, तो समाज के लिए कुछ करो. You have ample profits. Do something for those from whom you are getting the profits. That was the rationale. And that rationale, nobody could argue against. अगर हर एक के ऊपर हमने ये लगाता, तो लोग कहते भैया हम तो छोटे मोटे धंधा करते हैं, हमारे 2-4 रुपए के प्रॉफिट में आप क्यों इसमें आ रहे हैं? लेकिन वो मोटे सेठ जिनके पास करोड़ों की कमाई है, वो क्या इसको मना कर सकते थे? They could not stand up to society and say, we earn huge profits, but we will do nothing for the community. They cannot say that. And they could not say it. And that is why we won the battle against them. Broadly speaking, this is how the CSR law comes into place. All right? Now, what is so special about this law? Why is it called strategic CSR as opposed to normal or informal CSR or voluntary CSR? What is so specific about this law? इसमें क्या aspects हैं which make it first in the world, different in kind, only country in the world to do CSR differently? So I'm going to ask you very quickly to list those 4 or 5 things which are very, very particular and the essence of the law which makes it strategic. So can I start with any one of you? What is so special about this law? Yes, please.
Sir, the company, if they are
Give
not
me only one at a time. Huh?
if a company is not able to spend the amount, then they can disclose that why they have not spent it. It is not exactly mandatory for everyone. If they have any reason to justify they have not spent that by this for this reason we have.
Now
not
I'm going to
spent.
save this part for the last because it is very important. It is something that didn't come to us initially. ये एक बहुत ही important मुद्दा है जिसके विषय में आपको मैं थोड़ा विस्तृत से बताऊंगा. But it was important to us at the very end to understand what we should do. But this is one aspect of it. Anyone else?
It is.
No, give me one quality.
Use the mic.
Yeah. What is in the law, any aspect of the law, which makes it so incredibly different from anywhere in the world? क्या है वो 4-5 चीजें जो हमारी लॉ में
The one is specific about that you have to focus in your business area of operation.
not at all. What do you need not also? That is what you, whether you want to or not. What are those 4-5 things in the law? आप हर दिन काम करते हो CSR में, बताओ.
Schedule 7.
नहीं, वो तो शेड्यूल होता है. पॉइंट बताओ, इस लॉ में क्या है?
It talks about sustainability of the project.
No, not at all.
It made it
सेक्शन 135 पे जाओ, याद करो कि वो है क्या? क्या है वो लाइन?
Did it make incumbent upon the industries to mandatory?
सोचो सोचो, सेक्शन 135 में क्या है? आप लोग काम कर रहे हो,
So CSR committee will be responsible for. They will be accountable.
आप मत बोले, कोई और बोला.
coming out of the comfort zone to help people.
वो कोई लॉ बनता है, कमिंग आउट ऑफ कंफर्ट जोन में लॉ में लिखूंगा. लॉ में क्या लिखा है ये नहीं पता तो आप क्या CSR कर रहे हो और क्या CSR करोगे. सबसे पहले अपनी जानकारी बढ़ाओ. जब जानकारी नहीं है तो कॉर्पोरेटाइजेशन ऑफ एनजीओ और एनजीओआइजेशन ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट में कैसे घुसोगे भाई? कॉर्पोरेट वाला पूछेगा क्या चाहते हो, कहते सर हम CSR करना चाहेंगे. CSR क्या है? अब हमें तो नहीं पता. Then what is the dialogue with the corporate? If he asks you what is CSR and you can't say, why will he give you any money? Come on students, give your brain a shake. Which Mr. Singh also spoke about in the morning. So let me list them for you. Number 1. And write down these little Chatterjee-isms, you might say. 1. CSR goes from back room to board room. पीछे वाले कमरे से CSR कहाँ आता है? बोर्ड के रूम में. क्यों? चटर्जी साहब ने ये क्यों लिखा? उसका इंटेंशन क्या था?
Create ownership.
Sorry?
Create ownership.
Create ownership, of course. But what else?
Transparency.
Transparency, yes. That accountability, yes.
Leadership.
Leadership, yes. All of these put together. The first important element is CSR का decision कौन लेगा? only the board will take decisions on CSR, none else. Therefore, decision at the highest decision-making level, which means the best brains of the company would be engaged in CSR. And every company employee would know that that's what the leadership wants us to do. The command is coming from the top. Whether I like it or I don't like it, I have to do it. So, first one is back room to boardroom, decision at the highest. Will the whole board take decision on CSR? बोर्ड में फर्ज करो कि 22 बंदे बैठे हैं, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी है? नॉट एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी. उस कमेटी का नाम क्या है? यस. आई डोंट वांट टू टेक अ क्लास, बट आई एम जस्ट गिविंग यू व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. इस कमेटी के मेंबरान कितने होंगे? 3. उसमें से एक बंदा कौन होगा? एग्जैक्टली. सो नाउ रिमेंबर द लॉ, ऑल ऑफ यू नो इट. Which simply means that there is a CSR committee of the board which alone will form the CSR policy of the company, put it up to the board, get it approved by the full board, and then CSR will happen in the company. अब क्या हो गया? ऐसी हथकड़ियां पहनाई के इससे आप निकल नहीं सकते हो. करेंगे वो, आदेश देंगे, पूरी कंपनी करेगी. At the same time, one of you talked about accountability. These 3 CSR committee members, suppose you want to know कि Philips कंपनी में CSR के 3 कंपनी के जो ये CSR कमेटी के मेंबरान हैं वो कौन है? आप कैसे जानोगे? लॉ क्या कहता है? Good point. The names, faces and the DI numbers of all the 3 CSR committee members must be on the website. अगर नहीं है, company is to be prosecuted. Now suppose you are a member of that CSR committee और आपका snapshot, आपका DI number, आपका CV कंपनी के वेबसाइट में CSR कमेटी को दिख रहा है, तो आप अपने आप को क्या सोचोगे? भाई अब तो कोई उपाय नहीं है. I have to make sure that I am responsible in the public domain for all my acts of commission and omission. And I am individually responsible. What happens to the CSR money? So we fixed accountability by name, by face, by the director's identity number. There is no escape route. अब पतली गली से भाग नहीं सकते. So the first aphorism or whatever, the axiom was this, that it must be in the board. What is number 2? Not you. Anyone else? और क्या? Very good. Excellent. Super. How would you spend CSR money? I like this guy's face. He's a super cat. Look how handsome he is. Yeah. इसको दे दे 5 लाख. अरे इनकी कितनी अच्छी पर्सनालिटी है भाई, इसको 10 लाख. अरे यार वो तो मंत्री जी ने रेकमेंड किया, उसको दे दो 20 लाख. अरे भाई ये तो मेरे चाचा जी के लड़के भाई एनजीओ बढ़िया चला रहे हैं, उसको दे दे 20 लाख. Informality in allocation of CSR monies should not be done in this manner. Even if it is done, मैंने आपको दे दिए 20 लाख, आप मेरे नज़दीकी करीबी इंसान हैं, तो 20 लाख लेकर आपने किया क्या? What did you do with the money allocated to you? You have to make sure that the money allocated to you is spent on a project only, and only on a project. It cannot be spent on anything else. This is axiom number 2. Why? Why on a project? भाई मैं तो इतना बढ़िया इमारत इसको बना लिया मैंने. It's a beautiful building. I've rented it out to 10 different people. I'm getting 2 lakhs of profit every month. Wonderful CSR. Yes or no?
No.
So, project mode is essential. Why? What are the elements of a project? Yes, of course, correct. What are the 4 or 5 elements of a project? 1, start date, end date. Yes or no?
Yes.
Number 2, allocation of money. Yes or no?
Yes.
3, milestones,
Yes.
both physical and financial. 4, is it monitorable or not monitorable? Can you monitor a project?
Yes.
You can. And last, what did the project do? Impact. Can you measure it? You can, because it is a project. Therefore, for all of these reasons, every single CSR allocation of money must be for a project only and none other. These things you should know, because when you go to a corporate and you start talking to them, you're asking for a project, not for something different. If you ask for something which is not a project, you won't get it because you're disqualified from day one. Right? So that's 2. What's 3? There are only 5. We can make 10, 100, whatever, but 5 basic points. What's number 3? So, suppose somebody asked me, भाई चटर्जी साहब आपने तो बहुत लंबा चौड़ा लिख लिया, लेकिन आपने कहीं नहीं बोला कि what is CSR? अपने आप को बड़े गुणी समझते हो, विशेषज्ञ समझते हो, इसके पितामह समझते हो. भाई CSR क्या है? What does section 135 or any of the rules, does it define CSR anywhere? Yes or no? Think, put on your caps. भाई इतना बड़ा सेक्शन 135 हो गया, रूल की किताब है, 20 पन्ने की रूल्स की किताब है. And the answer is no. Why did not Dr. Chatterjee write a definition of CSR? Is he an idiot? If you are a private company and I have told you to do CSR and you tell me, अरे Dr. Chatterjee साहब, you're telling me to do CSR, पहले बताओ तो सही है क्या? She has a right to ask. So what's my reply? अगर मैं ही कहूँ कि मैं नहीं जानता, I don't know, what will she think? So does the Act, do the rules, define CSR anywhere? And the answer is no. And the question is, why not? Why is not CSR defined in the Act, in the rules anywhere? Why didn't I write a definition? Can you take a guess? अगर मैं आपसे शुरू करूं CSR क्या है और वहां खत्म करूं कि CSR क्या है, कितने डेफिनेशन आएंगे मेरे पास? हर एक इंसान एक अलग डेफिनेशन देगा। अगर मैंने आपसे पूछा जिंदगी क्या है, आप भी कुछ बोलेंगे। इनसे भी पूछा जिंदगी क्या है, जवाब क्या मिलेगा? CSR is like that. Because the definition of CSR is so amorphous and so difficult to capture in a sentence that across many centuries, hundreds and thousands of CSR definitions exist. If I had added my own, every word would have been analyzed. This can mean this, that can mean that, this can mean this. In the context of Gandhi, it means this. In the context of Elkington, it means this. In the context of Potter, it means this. And we would have had no clarity at the end. Therefore, what did I say? Therefore, what does the law say? Where does it say that? Exactly. Therefore, we made Schedule 7. And that is the essence of the CSR law. That when you spend money on any of the activities included in Schedule 7, then and then only it is CSR, none other. When we were framing Schedule 7, from the United Nations side, what did we have with us? We had only the MDGs. And therefore, you will see that the Schedule 7 that we had framed has almost all the Millennium Development Goals in Schedule 7. The idea was to encourage sustainability and to link sustainability, the UN sustainability goals, with our CSR system. The link was established through Schedule 7. Now the fact remains that subsequently, of course, we now have the SDGs, and they multiplied from 8 to 17. But yet again, you will find that almost all of those 17 are still covered under Schedule 7, apart from things like what's happening under the oceans or partnerships between nations and so on. But this new high-level committee, which has just been constituted, is also looking to see if any part of the Sustainable Development Goals is not in Schedule 7, that's also likely to be put in. So in our country, we've tried to establish a very close linkage between CSR and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All right? So that was point 3. What's point 4? Anyone else? What is point 4? Corporates give money. Who implements? Corporates give money. Who implements? I am located on the 6th floor of World Trade Center, Mumbai. I am a multi-million-dollar company. I want to do CSR. I have 100 employees who sit on this one floor. How will I do my CSR? It's very easy to say. You earn 5 crores profits, do CSR. How? I occupy one floor, World Trade Center, Mumbai. I have 100 employees, all of whom are employed in my firm by the HR agency for a specific purpose. He's a finance man, he's a production man, he's an HR person. I have an HR department, I have this. So who's going to implement my CSR?
Is it implementing coordinators?
Therefore, imagine when you make policy, how much you have to think. Therefore, NGOs, Therefore, the voluntary sector. Why voluntary sector? They have? In handling money? I would have given it to banks. No. Why? Unbiased? My God. Why?
They have connected to the community.
Exactly, my friend. Brilliant. All of these fancy people sitting on the 6th floor of World Trade Center in Mumbai have no connect with any community. They are not grassroots people. What is the purpose of CSR? Anyone telling me here? What's the purpose?
To help the needy people.
To help the poor, the marginalized, the needy, disadvantaged. The purpose of CSR is to develop those people and those areas. Can these people do it? Not a hope in hell. Only people who can do it is you. Because you are grassroots people. You are community people. You understand what is to be done. And therefore, when they engage with you, you can tell them that we are working in so-and-so community, these are really poor people, they need your help. This is the project which I am giving you. And if you fund it, this is what we will do. And therefore, the fourth most important axiom of all of this is that implementation should be done through an NGO, whether it be a trust, a society, a Section 8 company, not-for-profit company, or worst comes to the worst, by yourselves. But mostly people don't do it by themselves because they don't have specially created staff to do that. You can create a foundation, and the foundation of your company can then engage other NGOs. But broadly speaking, implementation is to be done by the implementing agency, which has to be one of these three entities. This was the fourth most important part and the distinctive feature. What's the fifth? So, let's take up your point. And this is a question I'm often asked. The fifth point was, you must spend 2% of your profit on CSR activities. Right? What does the word must mean? If you say must, it means mandatory. What does mandatory mean? What is the repercussion? No. So the repercussion is penalty. If you do not do, then what? In the parliamentary committee, this is important for us to know, the corporates were called, NGOs were called, many times they were called, and their views were solicited. And the chairman of that parliamentary committee tried to find a way, because the corporates kept on saying, we do CSR from our heart, from our soul, it comes in our bloodstream, it excites us, we love people. Why government wants to force it on us? It's a sacred work we have been doing for Pushto for many generations. We love human beings, we do so much. Why government is making it mandatory? Are you idiots? Are you fools? We know what is CSR. We have been doing it for hundreds of years. We don't need legislation. They went on saying. And I was sitting in the corner, Secretary Corporate Affairs was sitting in the corner. Then the NGOs would come. What would the NGOs tell the parliamentary committee? What would the NGOs give This is what corporates were saying. What would the NGOs tell the parliament? इन पे विश्वास मत कीजिए सर, सारे चोर बदमाश मुनाफाखोरी इंसान हैं। इनको सर अगर आप छोड़ दोगे तो ये क्या करेंगे? लोगों को लूटेंगे, क्योंकि हर दिन सवेरे शाम इनका काम ही है लूटना। इसलिए हमें दीजिए सर पैसे। The corporates, as you rightly mentioned, are thieves, thugs, rascals. If you do not make the law mandatory, they will never do anything worthwhile. Therefore, sir, as head of the parliamentary committee, we as NGOs recommend to you that you must make the law mandatory, punishable, and make the punishment as harsh as possible. So what would poor Mr. Sinha do? The corporates are giving one side, NGOs are giving other side. What to do in the law? There's a popular saying in our local language. Saap bhi mare, lathi bhi na toote. Hit the snake in such a way that the snake dies, but your stick is not broken. So what's the via media? That's what he was talking about. So we went back to the United Nations. And you have a very good principle there, which says, comply or explain. And that's the fifth leg of this stool. So satisfied were the corporates, the NGOs, and to some extent the media, who questioned us very closely. And in this idea of comply or explain, we said, what explanations you can give is your business. You can give any explanation. You can say, I forgot. You can say, I was holidaying in Mauritius. You can say, I went to parent-teacher meeting in my school. You can say, my car had a puncture. You can say anything. But what you say must be on your website, must be in the public domain, must be recorded in the minutes of the board meeting of your company, and must be loaded on the website of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So we adopted what you might call a comply or explain system, and we said that those who are not spending, they will become part of what you call the name or shame gallery. Okay, so that's where it stood. Now very quickly, and I'll spend the last 5 minutes here on this. We've had 3 years. Can we just move this a little bit? This is a quick analysis of 100 companies, first year of the, and this is of course loaded, so it will be passed on to you in any case. These 100 companies, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs had analyzed them, and this was 2014-15. Observe that 27% companies spent more than 2%. 64% spent less. These are the top 100 companies, mind you. What are the total number of companies which come under the ambit of this legislation? Just give you an idea. How many companies are there in India? About 11 lakhs. 1100,000 companies are registered in India. How many of them fall under the ambit of the law? 100? 1100,000 companies. How many fall under the ambit of the law?
6,000.
Double that? Triple that? Around 18,000, 18 to 20,000 companies. Of course, only 12 or 14,000 companies actually reported. But around 16 to 17,000 companies fall under the ambit of the law. All right, so observe this beautiful 2% of people who spent nothing, zilch, zero, didn't spend even a single rupee. This section in green spent half of what they were supposed to spend, and so on and so forth. In this segment, the highest 50 to 100% about is the largest segment of the pie chart. Okay. Top 10 companies who spent more than the 2%. Remember, this is 2014-15, first year. A printout of all of this will be given to every one of you, so don't worry. You can see some really good names here. And you will also significantly see how this changes. I've just listed the same ones in terms of another table. This I do not normally show, but these were the bottom 9 companies, the worst performing at that time. Monsanto, for example, who were trying to enter India at the time, recognizable face, are absolute duds. So that's how it was. Forget this now. About 27 of those 100 companies were public sector companies. Now these at that time were the sectors from where the corporates came. And you will see steel had 8, but pharmaceuticals 24, finance companies 24. So these were the highest contributing sectors of our economy in the CSR segment. About 21% of the total CSR budget of that year remained unspent, about 1/5. Now see the budgets. Reliance Industries has a budget of 761 crores. ONGC 660, see the blue line. Infosys 243, ITC 213, NTPC 283. So these are the top companies who have more than 100 crore budgets for their CSR. They spent 2,783 crores, just these top 10. So here are the areas in that Schedule 7 where maximum amount of money was spent. And you can see this pink segment here, health, care and wash. As a result of the Prime Minister's campaign on sanitation, a large amount of money was spent here. But education, the number 2 one, is usually the biggest sector. Most companies spend a lot of money in the blue one, which is education and skills. So health, education, and then of course we have environment, rural development, gender, heritage, culture, and so on and so forth. Observe the PM Relief Fund. Virtually no one contributes there, although it's a safety valve. Why don't people contribute to Prime Minister's Relief Fund?
This is a pool of money which is utilized wherever it's needed and it's not spent in a project manner.
If you are the director of a company, would you give your CSR money to PM's Relief Fund? what would your fellow board members ask you? वहां देखकर हमें क्या फायदा भाई बताओ. देसी लैंग्वेज में यही तो है. In depositing money with the Prime Minister's Relief Fund, what is the benefit to my company? That I can get with any NGO. What is Prime Minister's Relief Fund going to do? Benefit is zero. Therefore, unless you are in real distress, nobody contributes there. And they should not also. Idea is that you should spend on projects yourself. So that was a safety valve which we had left. In case you haven't spent, you can deposit. Now this is important for us. Which were the highest spending states? Now see that 18% is in the most developed part of India, Maharashtra. The biggest companies are also located there. Economically, the strongest part of India is there. And money is also spent there. Which is the second highest? Which is actually a good sign. Because if you're spending in Rajasthan, probably you are spending on disadvantaged people. But look at Tamil Nadu, 273 crores. Karnataka, 421 crores. So look at Gujarat, 234 crores. So a lot of money is going into the already developed areas of the country. Is that what we want? Therefore, now we are thinking of incentivizing spends in the more backward area. Now see this. And I want to draw your attention to the red flags. The most backward part of India is there. Least spending is also there. Now this the legislation does not talk about, at least not yet. But the idea now is to slightly tweak the legislation to see that CSR money is spent in what we now call the aspirational districts, which are the really hard districts of our country where poverty is more or less entrenched. So can we do something about that? So this will also tell you how our model differs from the Michael Porter model of shared value and so on and so forth. We need. अच्छा वो दूसरा वाला लगाओ भैया. What is that, gentleman? I want to put the second presentation. Just put the second presentation. Scroll up a bit. Not here. You just go to the desktop. On the desktop you will see. There are two PowerPoint presentations. Yes, so put this one first. This ISE presentation. The one on your. Go down below. Walk this side to your right. This side. Yeah. Go down. This green multicolored one. This one. So this is 15, 16. Just 4 or 5 slides here. Stop. Go back a bit to the first one. So I can do that from here. So the top 10 companies spend about 37% of the actual expenditure on CSR. The rest, we took a sample here, 2,500 eligible companies. This was one part. But see this. These yellow columns are the actual spends. The green one is the number of companies. Out of that 2,500, 1621, 1344. The prescribed budgets of these companies was this much. So spending is now gradually increasing in the second year because corporates are beginning to understand. Now reporting also is going up. The companies reporting out of those 2,500 actually no spend, again see 277 companies spent zero even in the second year of the CSR law. Positive spend, red, which is much larger now in the second year, and of course the companies who reported out of those 2,500, observe the leakages. Out of 2,500 companies, only 1620 reported, others did not report. So these are where the leakages are taking place. Now see here, the actual CSR spend goes up in the second year. Maximum space in the pie chart is taken up by actual CSR spend, and just a small slice is for unspent amounts. So you can see that the CSR law is now taking traction. Top 10 companies. Some of our best companies are represented here, and you can see that number 2 and number 3 are public sector companies. But some of the, and the last one, the 10th one is also a public sector company. It's about 3 public sector in the top 10. No, even Central Coalfields is there. So 4. This is not particularly interesting. Okay, so we'll just put the next one on. The final presentation is another 4 or 5 slides. This one on this side. There's a very similar one here on this one. Now this is the one which you can see now in the National CSR portal, so I don't have to say it again. This is taken from the public space, public domain. The Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs has put out this 16-17 results, taking it up there. But observe now, if you look at the green pillar, there are still people who are not spending. No spend. Good question, I'm going to answer that. What you now see here though is, if you look at this bottom one, the companies that were reporting, I told you around about 20,000 companies actually come, right? Of them, can you see 19,933 are now reporting in 16-17 because of the pressure applied by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The reporting has gone up considerably, and that allows the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to take legal action. Less than prescribed, if you see, in 2014-15 it was about 30%, 2015-16 32%, and 30%. So number of people who are spending less is about 1/3. But look at the zero CSR expenditure. That has come down from 54% to 49% to 47%. But it has to go to 0%. Nobody who is eligible should be spending nothing. This is finished, there is one more. Now this is the latest list, and you see there is not much change. Those who are spending are continuing to spend, and the top 10 are more or less the same. Education again tops the list of areas where we are spending. There's health, which was the second part, then rural development, environment, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll stop here. These are the top 10 states over 3 years. So where are we spending the most? Andhra, Odisha, Gujarat, Delhi, Haryana. Where's the Northeast? Not present. Where is Bihar? We don't know. Where is Jharkhand? We don't know. Where is Uttarakhand? We don't know. So some of the areas where we actually should be spending money, we are not. Read this for 2 minutes. What are the reasons given for not spending? Can you give it? The company is not required to constitute CSR committee. वो कह रहा है website पे. They are even saying things which the board has passed which is against the law. 3 साल में location of project could not be finalized after 3 years. Then when will you finalize? You can therefore see not formed CSR committee. 3 साल निकल गए, committee आपसे बनी नहीं. We talk of private sector efficiency. ये उनकी efficiency है, देखिए. How efficient the private sector is, you can see from the complete lack of. Can you accept it? I mean, so this is the kind of crap that you actually see, despite it being in the public domain.
Do we know who said what?
Of course we do, 100%. I'm not going to show it to you here, but in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, everyone, which company has said what?
Not in the public domain.
No. And this is what the Ministry, this is the final and last slide. This is the kind of discrepancies that we normally find in the avoidance. One of the most important things was to know where you spent the money. वही नहीं बताया. Missing. So can you imagine how happy they are to break the law? Now go back to what those NGOs told the chairman of the parliamentary committee, and in retrospect you will see, okay, so let's just call that. Okay, so now this is very briefly to you the past, the present. Now think about the future. In light of all of this, and we'll shut it down in the next 2 or 3 minutes, what would you like to suggest to Dr. Lyrie and the others we should do? What are the glaring problems? Let's see. So we'll start with you. Okay.
Sir,
Just give me one suggestion.
Sir, there is not only problem with the companies who are not spending the money. The companies who are in top.
We are trying to note down suggestions. This is the last.
Organizing IPF, opening multi-quality facility hospitals which are having high fees, opening educational institution and colleges which are having very high fees from CSR. That can also be said that it is a misuse of CSR.
Yes, it's a very, very good point. So, 791 crores was spent by Reliance Industries, as you saw. Why so? How could they show highest expenditure? Because they did something which you mentioned. Built a multi-specialty hospital, 500 या 600 करोड़ का बना दिया. उसमें आलीशान कमरे बने हैं, and you are treating high-paying patients. Is that CSR? No. So now what the ministry is doing is slashing that down and saying, no, you only spent 200 crores, which is 1/3 of your budget. Please arrest 3 members of your CSR committee. Now, unless you do this, you are not going to have traction. So, notices are being sent out to people like this who are not only spending less or spending zero, but those who are high reputation companies but trying to fraud the law. And there is no dearth of them. That's why Mr. Gyaneshwar Singh mentioned in the morning, 279 notices to be precise have been issued. And now this year, almost 2,000 notices will be issued. So that defaulting companies, we have given them 3 years of leeway, good faith, but now you can't get away. So much larger quantums of money will come into sectors for implementing. Idea is to unleash the money so that people like you are benefited. Once we have said that likely about 20,000 crores will be spent every year on CSR, and that the ministry will now ensure. Okay, so that's a good point.
सर एक और
अब बताओ.
सर एक पॉइंट ये होना चाहिए कि जिन कंपनियों ने स्पेंड नहीं किया है इस साल द अमाउंट शुड बी कैरी फॉरवर्डेड फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर और इन फॉर फ्यूचर यूज एंड दे मस्ट हैव टू स्पेंड.
That's also a good suggestion. Those who haven't spent, they must be compelled to spend what they have not spent in the past. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
There should be a post of penalty part of that.
One sec. What were you saying?
So we have noticed that the actual decision making at the CSR committee level, at times there's much more disconnect because the champions who are going and actually implementing these projects don't get to speak and there is no connection. There are many companies which doesn't have CSR people.
So what's the suggestion I take? Just 2 sentences to the ministry. Just give me the suggestion. Think about it in your mind. Batao.
The companies which are not spending the money for the CSR program, they should be give some punishment as a
Correct. That is what 134O allows us to do, and the ministry is trying to take, not trying, it will take action against the 3 members of the CSR committee whose name, face, identity are known to us. They are to be prosecuted. Okay? Yes.
Sir, you mentioned that comply or explain. So my suggestion would be the explanation there should be a limit of explanation and there should be prescribed explanations. It shouldn't be that.
This is what Ganesh was saying that we are going to eliminate from this explanation list. We were not going to say what can be an explanation. We are going to see what cannot be. If you give these explanations, they will be rejected. So a reject list is coming. This is what he was saying in the morning. Good point. Anyone else?
Some spend could be organizing some backward state of the profit of all the
Yes.
CSR.
So the idea is a very good one that we incentivize spending. Again, in those states which I showed you, no mention of Northeast, none of those ways. So in the aspirational districts identified by Planning Commission, if you spend your CSR, you will get additional benefits. We can give, incentivize, rather than coerce. We can incentivize spending in the backward areas of the country. That's a tweak that we want to give to the ministry. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
May sound simplistic, but can we also make an appeal to their hearts?
No.
Videos of
Please, no. They have no hearts. So I'll stop right here and then, yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee, very much. And as always, like I said, I think it's worth my coming all the way from Mumbai. Even had this conclave not happened, I would have just come to hear you because it's always so inspiring to hear about your journey. And like I said, there couldn't have been a better session on the CSR law because he is the law. And that doesn't sound too good, but unfortunately, sadly, that's true. And the Chatterjeeisms continue, Dr. Chatterjee. I think, thank you very much. We will break for lunch now. I think we are doing pretty good as far as time is concerned. I mean, pretty good in the sense that given Indian standards and given the, yeah, David, that's a, Indian stretchable time we call it. But before we let Dr. Chatterjee go, of course, Dr. Chatterjee is always very approachable. And I think some of the suggestions and feedback that has come from this forum will definitely be conveyed back to him. And like I said, the Northern Conclave is not an end. Okay, what both Professor Lahiri and me have discussed is that this is just the start of kind of a stakeholder consultation. So, following this conclave, we're going to be having a white paper where Jindal and Tata Institute are going to be both part of it. We invite other institutions and think tanks to be part of it. Dr. Chatterjee, of course, is going to be a part of it. And we will also involve the MCA and Professor Bilchitz as well. So I think that is, and that's why it was important to set the context. And I think the setting the context, Amit, has been beautifully done by, of course, started by the Joint Secretary himself. He gave us the updated information. You know, often the problem that happens is that we keep, it's more of hearsay, right? We don't know how many companies are actually doing CSR, but here you had it from the horse's mouth, literally, from the MCA. And here you had it from another horse's mouth. You know, the Royal Bengal tiger, actually, not the horse, Dr. Chatterjee. And of course, I think both Professor Lahiri and me were able to articulate why a public university like the Tata Institute and a private university like Jindal University have got together. What is exactly, what are we trying to do here?